We're gonna, this will be live streamed because this is technically a meeting, so just. Very good. Okay, well, as I said at the close of our last session, this is like one of my personal favorite events we do. VMI is a unique and special place, but we are actually a college. So it's great to have the academic board with us. So I'll turn it over to the dean, who's going to MC. But this is a very interactive. We'll do some introductions, and then it's just real fun and interactive. So kick us off.
Thank you very much. So how we're going to start, department heads, you got a bit of a role here. We're going to go around. I'm going to ask each of you, if you're a department head, not everyone else who's in the room, but if you're a department head, one of the 18 department heads, please stand up, introduce yourself, know a little bit your department, how long you've been at VMI, how long you've been a department head, anything else you might want to say about yourself or your department. And we'll just go around so you can all introduce, and then bring it back to the board to ask questions, whatever is on the board's mind. So we'll start over here, Jay.
My name is Jay Johnson. I'm the department head in the Human Performance and Wellness Department. And I've been here, I think it's almost 20 years. I think 20 years this fall. But this is my 6 months into being a department head. So I'm still learning a little bit and glad to be here and welcome.
James Guerra, I'm the head of the psychology department. It's my 30th year, VMI, and then 20 as department head. That's why this rookie is sitting beside me.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Addington. I'm head of the electrical and computer engineering department here. I've been here since 1996. Been department head since 2000.
We're kind of stealing this time because we have ROTC 10 later, but Nicole Scott, Air Force ROTC. I'm on my 3rd year. It's been great getting to know all the old members, not old as in like you're old, but experienced and been with us.
Good morning, good afternoon, Colonel Joe Hanson. I'm the Army ROTC head, artillery officer coming out of First Corps over in Seattle. I've been here about 6 months. I'm just fallen in love with VMI. So if you ever have any questions about Army ROTC, don't hesitate to ask. Thank you.
Houston Johnson, head of the history department. In my 13th year at VMI and finishing up my 5th year as head of the department.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Miller. I've been here since 1988, and I've been department head since 1992.
It's great to Dr. Emily, because I feel like I haven't been here that long. I've been here since 1996. And I love it here. I'm the department head of physics and astronomy, and I've been department head, I guess, 3 months.
I'm Chuck Newhouse, department head civil and environmental engineering. I've been here 17 years and department head in my 5th year.
Valentina Dimitrova-Gretschel. I'm actually not a department head, but I'm representing the department head of the economics and business department. Since he couldn't be here today, and this is my 14th year at VMI.
My name is Dennis Foster. I'm the head of the Department of International Studies. This is my 21st year at VMI, and my 7th year as a department.
Hello, Stan Smith from the chemistry department. I've been at VMI since the summer of '99, and this is my 8th year as department.
Good afternoon. I'm Abby Carrico, head of modern languages and cultures in my 2nd year as the head and my 12th year here at VMI.
Hi, I'm Jay Sullivan. I'm the new department head in mechanical engineering, and I've been here for like 21 years now. Started as the head in August. So
I'm Ashley Smythe. I'm the head of biology department. This is my 10th year at VMI, and I started this fall with both of the J's. So just August as taking over as department head.
Troy Seamers, head of applied mathematics. Got here in '99 with Stan.
And I've been department head since '09.
Great, experience. I always love the tenure. I think it says something wonderful about you all at VMI. That we have so many dedicated professors who've been here for so long. So, we've done this before. It's kind of a free for all. I'll open it up and board members, you can ask a question generally and they do a pretty good job of deciding who will answer, and sometimes multiple, and a lot of fun. So I'll kick it off. Anybody wants to ask a question?
I'll ask one if that's all right.
You.
Okay, so. And that's Scott. So when like econ and business seems to be a fairly popular major. So there's a cap or so of rats that can get in there. How does that impact our admissions? And at what point do you try to expand the department, or what has happened in the past in terms of its growth, and I suspect that may be true with some other majors as well.
We have what we call a right sizing plan that we put in place initially 10 years ago, which tried to align the supply side faculty with the demand side, cadet demand for majors. And that was done that way because, of course, when you have faculty in place, they're not interchangeable with other departments. It's not a business with an accountant that could be in this division or that division. I can't take an electrical engineer and have them teach economics because our accreditation, not only would it not work from a teaching standpoint, but accreditation would be at risk. And we monitor that tries to even out as best as possible the teaching load given by the number of hours, credit hours, a lot of times the number of students being taught. And we use that to measure, do we need to add resources here in a particular department? So every department has target number of rats and associated thirds, seconds, and firsts. But I say they're soft. Also, there's a sort of department number, then there's a fudge factor to adjust it. And then there's a sort of a no more than this because we'll buy. Now, what comes in doesn't always, as rats, doesn't always meet or match the right size. Right now, with the last few years, there's been a lot more demand for international studies and economics and business. And there's less demand for some of the STEM fields. So we've had, Valentina, tell me if I got it wrong, I think we've had 2 extraordinarily large rat classes last 2 years. So for example, the right sizing number for ECB was 65 rats. Last year you had 80 some rats, and the year before about the same number. So it puts a little strain on resources in the short run because their class sizes might have to be bigger than they want them to be. Now for admissions, right, this is just a conversation with Joe and Shannon. Right, but as I told General Wins a couple of years ago, I said, we know we want this number of rats. I'm not going to come into you, sir, and say, I put my foot down with admissions. We maintain the right sizing numbers, but we have 427 rats. And that would be the bill I died on. So in the short run, we'll work with Joe, and Joe will call me and say, can we go higher? Can we go higher? We do the best we can to try to keep.
But if someone comes in and say they can't get into econ walking in the door,
they might be able to get in later.
You start them somewhere else. Is the curriculum set to where they could get in their 3rd class year?
Yeah, I mean, we've had students change majors into their 2nd class year. In certain majors, it's harder. It depends on what they're switching. Like a history major going to IS and IS going to history, they can probably switch in their 2nd class year and still graduate. So yes, there's a switching process. The cadet has to go through a process to request to change majors. If that major is underneath its cap, they automatically get in. If they're at the cap, they go on a wait list. Each semester with adjustment. Sometimes it's just a puzzle. Oh, this student wants to get into psychology, but here's someone that wants out of psychology, so there's a space. You just make the shift, trying to maintain that caps as best we can.
You know, Bob, maybe we could ask everybody to speak to an exhibit you took us through this morning, which showed GPAs. And again, that's one indication of how the classroom is behaving and what's happening in the classroom, but it was a good message, actually. But what's behind it is that we're getting people coming in more qualified, we're providing them more support. Maybe just people can react a little bit to the exhibit you shared without seeing the exhibit.
Sure.
The trend, I think you could describe for everyone.
Sure. So for everyone who didn't see it, the trend was that in the RAT class, the last 5 or 6 years, GPA in the fall has been fairly flat. And of course, every class, third class, higher GPA, second class, first class due to attrition. But the upper classes have been trending up. The GPA has been trending up. And so not only fall, but for the whole academic year. So from your perspectives, the question had come up in the meeting this morning about academic rigor, underneath it all, grade inflation. One of the things I mentioned was while GPAs have stayed up or sometimes trending up, we also have an increase in students on ACT-PRO. And so there's a little bit of the center of the distribution flattening and the tails getting fatter in order to keep the average. I got this right, Matt? I got the average fairly flat. So from your perspective, right, the question is, what's rigor like in the classroom? What are the students like, maybe across different classes? Your sense of grade inflation, like that, whatever you'd like to comment. I got it right. Stand up if you're gonna.
Yeah, qualify.
How long do I have to speak,
It's
James?
It's open to anyone.
I think as he's hinting, we are seeing a bit of a bifurcation. I don't know if that's coming from the new scholarships that are coming in. We're getting some amazingly talented, smart students that have moved the gap that far. So I think they're starting to see a widening gap in the middle with some really smart students and some that are a little bit lagging behind. So I think if we can, as General Wins has said, at least to us, and I think in the future, if we can find the funding for more STP training to get all of the rats here, or as many as possible, that can move the needle. The MAC, which is relatively new staff, they are developing some amazing programs on tracking. I think we need to get the first quarter grades back in place with teeth so that the rats can get earlier help. We found that by midterm, about 75% of the students by midterm, that's their grade or worse. So if we don't track them early, they dig a hole, they're in that hole for a long time. So I hope that with Shannon, with the MAC, with some of these other programs from the Pell grants, that we can do earlier identification.
I'm on the appeals committee, and one of the big topics every meeting is AI. Any general comments on, are more students adapted to it as they come in? And just some general views on it.
But it doesn't upon that relative to in your departments where you're accepting, again, the application of AI, knowing societally we're moving.
A little bit from my own experience in our writing intensive optics lab, which I taught in the fall. This is the second year in a row I've tried to allow them on certain parts of the lab to implement AI. My goal was to teach them how to use it professionally, efficiently, without using it to write report. So the goal is they sort of draft and then can use AI to sort of edit the draft or on some parts they put in what they want the draft to say and say the introduction, and then let AI create it, but then they are responsible for then editing what AI has created every time. I see sort of the AI, in my opinion, situations like that, like a calculator, you're going to be able to do the math, but the calculator is a tool, it's maybe not in some cases, but there are other cases where we don't want them to have access to solve problems for them. I do think as an academic institution, you should be teaching them how to use it. Because when they get into history, I always tell them, the person's not gonna tell you, write this paper, but don't use AI. So, it's the whole narrative.
Thank you. Else, any other department heads want to talk about AI in the classroom?
I'll address it a little bit. We're really interested in biology in getting cadets to use it and learn how to use it responsibly. We haven't been very successful at this point because frankly, the cadets are terrified of it. Because they know cadets have been dismissed for using AI inappropriately, and it's not that they don't exactly trust us, but they're really wary of it. I'm using it so much in my research, my just day-to-day work, even my teaching. And I think our cadets are at a deep disadvantage if we send them out in the world without any experience using this, because their colleagues, everybody that they encounter in the world is going to be using it, and they're going to look really unprepared if we don't let them use it, teach them to use it responsibly, and, you know, send them off with some knowledge of it. Because right now, I mean, I can't, even in an in-class exercise, it's hard to get them. They're just afraid to even open it on their computers. Because they have, you know, they figured out for it, which is good, but it's hindering our teaching them, and I think preparing them for the world that they're going to face where everybody is using it.
I'm so glad to hear you say that and really encourage overall with VMI to recognize again, AI, speaking from a military standpoint, we are rapidly integrating AI within everything that we do. And that even includes within development of papers, staff studies, but then also other areas. We're integrating it in within the business of our electronics and all of that, and really encourage VMI to see where on the academic side of how we, again, continue to keep absolute rigor of the honor system. How we recognize, again, AI is a dynamic change and already is. It's only going to accelerate every month. The academic department chairs will have such a big part of it.
To add to that, currently, every department has its own department policy on work on AI and work for grade. And this semester, just last week, an ad hoc committee published that is spending a semester that's going to provide recommendations to me and to the superintendent on revising the institute work for grade. So, because it's right, that's our, right, they've got all different policies and so they concerns.
Question. We got one other. Real quick. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a balance between narrative and generative AI. The narrative is usually encouraged, that's what people do on a regular basis. So you already have your own ideas, you just need to fine tune them into something versus saying, hey, do this for me. I think one of the aspects we're discouraging is the generative where a person now is taking off things completely and allows this boat or whatever to go to the task. So it's for cadets who are scared to death about, well, am I going to be drummed out? I mean, it's not just by department, but I think by instructor or by course to ensure that everyone understands that it's a certain aspects of it that are actually acceptable. But then you need to bring in your own creative component to the table.
That was the crux of my question, but there was a time, even when we were cadets in the last century, where I thought there was a methodology whereby you could just simply indicate when you submitted work that you had received some help, right?
Yeah.
And then you had to articulate the scope and magnitude of that help. And then the instructor was able to evaluate your work product based on how much was your work product and how much was the help received and take that into account in the grading process. Seems to me it's really
that still exists.
All AI is help received to some degree, as long as it's in the same way that if I don't cite a source to avoid plagiarism, it's simply a matter of if you're going to use the AI, make sure that it's noted for the benefit of the instructor and professor so that they can take that into account when evaluating your work.
you still have that, and there's the nuance. I think what James said is accurate. It's incumbent on cadets to read the syllabus, to know what they're allowed to do, read an assignment. But there are some nuances. There's some challenge, get down in the weeds. For example, we've talked as department heads about using Word. Well, at what point does, when you're typing and Word is not just spell checking, but is filling in sentences. Can you hit tab and fill in the sentence, and then if you sit there as a student saying, well, computer just told me to finish the sentence this way, and that's exactly how I would have done it. I mean, I've done that myself, right? Well, that sounds like the logical way to finish the sentence. But if I accept it, I've just used AI to write my sentence, right? So those are some of, you get down to the weeds, but yes, help received is, let's have to put a help received statement on all.
If I can just say, part of the challenge that we have, certainly in the history department, is trying to get cadets to use AI as a tool, not a crutch, right? I mean, we see reflexively cadets who sometimes find themselves short of time or with an absence of ideas, leaning on it to work for them. Both James and Stacy spoke to this as well. And so I think for us, we're trying to figure out the balance of how to promote critical thinking and good writing skills and critical reading and things like that, all the foundational values that we want our cadets to comply with, while at the same time figuring out how to integrate AI into our classrooms and our pedagogy in a way that's going to be productive and useful for their post-VMI careers. And part of the challenge, at least that my department has experienced, is technology is moving very quickly, and we're trying to catch up in terms of figuring out how to frame what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. Both in terms of work for grade issues and also philosophically in terms of what we want to teach our cadets in terms of how to use those tools. And my sense is that that's going to be an ongoing process, right? That it's not. And so for instance, a concrete example, right now, if you put a paper prompt into ChatGPT, it will make up references, and it will provide references as part of that paper, but many of them don't actually exist. And when we're trying as historians to teach our students to go and look at sources and to cite those sources as evidence to support their argument, then there's a lot of discontinuity when you're looking at AI, and it's just basically creating out of thin air references. And so I think certainly in my department, we're looking for productive and effective ways to integrate AI into our assignments, but we're swiftly on our way.
That's a question here. One could argue that there's nothing more important than us to get right than to have the right faculty. So if you look around here, I think we've done pretty well today. I think in the past 5 to 7 to 10 years, there were some times where we had some issues with not being competitive from a salary and benefit standpoint. Do y'all feel comfortable that we're bringing in young faculty 20 years from now in 2045, when they're meeting in here with the department heads, are we solid there in developing the faculty for the future?
Not everybody wants it.
I mean, like, you put it as simply as general engineering, we're always hiring people. So I will remark that the support, financial support, willingness to work with people, we've been able to bring in some really good people in our last hires. The different landscape that it used to be, we used to have an announcement for a job and get 100 applicants, and now we get lucky on a lot of time, but I don't think that's from a compensation standpoint. I think that the compensation has been strong. I think that's been market improvement since 10 years ago.
But why do you think you get so fewer applications? Is that a national issue?
It's very odd. I mean, just to go into the demographics a little bit, we haven't had an American person applied since Craig Altman. I guess it was like 5 years ago. That's the last one. Everyone seems to be from a much smaller pool now. I don't know if it's because industry jobs are more appealing. Less people are getting a doctorate. I really don't know why it is, but it's been very small applicant pools. I think, Chuck, you've had the same. I know electrical engineers have the same.
Just add a little bit, the compensation has improved tremendously, and that's been very helpful. But this is a challenging area, I would say, for young families with kids and the housing market. Those are tough things. I think,
anything VMI could do to, even if it's small help, to help with, finding housing, even if it's not actual money, just helping people relocate is a challenge for our people and childcare and those issues. We've got a fairly young faculty in civil. We've had a lot of turnover, and it's good. It's a good thing. And the compensation is good, but it is competitive out there. So it's a competitive market to find it.
But I don't know why the pool is so much smaller than it.
I think the pool is small partly because this is an unusual place and we get people that just, when they see wearing the uniform, that kind of scares some people away. And that's just always been the case. And so we try to deal with that and get word out through, people we know, and that's worked some. But certainly, I think for the compensation side, we're appreciative and things have improved. And we're not asking, board to buy houses for our people, but any kind of help, even if it's just finding housing, would be appreciative, because that's a challenge to move into this area. And spousal hires is tough in this area. So we don't have, if you're bringing a spouse and you're in academics, a lot of times you want to find a job for your spouse, and we just don't have the industry here to do that. So that's a challenge that's hard to figure out.
Let's add that I hear consistently, we also in biology have very small pools, and I do think the compensation is not the problem. I think we're quite strong in that area. I hear regularly, like Chuck said, yes, this area is challenging. There's often not anything for a spouse to do. Single people have a really hard time here. We sometimes can get them and then they leave because it's hard for them to find partners here. But I consistently hear that the uniform is a barrier. I consistently hear from people that I know in the field who I cannot cope with the uniform. And I mean, honestly, I do think, and even some of our candidates, it can be a hard sell. So I do think that that having to wear a uniform is a barrier for a lot of people. And granted, we have a lot of reasons, I think, why our pools are small, but I think that is certainly one of them.
I'd just like to say, problem history is not necessarily the same in terms of pool size. I mean, we routinely get 75 or 100 applicants for the positions, and it's a buyer's market, I think, in the humanities in general, but certainly in history. But I'd like to really reinforce what Chuck said about housing and childcare. I've got a number of young faculty members in my department, and it is a challenge for them to find a place to live and support for their kids. And it doesn't necessarily form a concrete barrier to recruitment, but it has the potential to negatively affect the larger environment. Like I've got a number of faculty who live in Charlottesville or in Stanton, not necessarily because they want to live there. I mean, that's a legitimate reason they might want to live somewhere else, but because they have to, because they can't find housing in Lexington. And we run a lot of evening events. All the cadets live right over there, so it's not like they're not going to be on post. And I certainly want my faculty to be available and accessible to cadets, and it's just harder to do that if you live an hour away and if you've got kids. So, like Chuck said, anything that VMI can do, not necessarily, I mean, could be financial, doesn't have to be financial, but in terms of locating housing, supporting childcare, things like that, I think that would be a material benefit to recruiting and retaining high quality young faculty who are going to stay here for a long time.
There is no childcare around, or is it just?
It's just really limited. So, there's Montessori school, 2 Montessori schools, a couple of church daycares, in the Albert Road.
Well, WNL's gotta have the same problem. If we ever looked at, I don't know, joining together with a, right?
Yeah, maybe, and they traditionally provide housing support for their faculty. And they've got the endowment to do that. But let me, Abby, please.
Thank you. I just want to say a couple years ago when I started, one of the main issues that I was seeing with faculty was relying on adjuncts. And I spoke to a few of you about this last year at lunch and how attracting adjuncts, so not just full-time, but adjuncts, which a lot of our departments need as part-time support. We do have a competitive salary for that, but we do not offer any benefits. And so having adjuncts actually move here, that usually doesn't happen. So we get them maybe from Harrisonburg or Roanoke or Charlottesville. And so if there's anything we could do for this part-time to make it a little bit more attractive, because in Lexington, in Rockbridge County, we don't have a bunch of PhDs just sitting around who are qualified to teach French or chemistry. And so one way, though, I do want to thank the administration here, the Dean's Office and the administration, because this was an issue that I saw coming in, like I said, 2 years ago. And this year, we were able to run a full-time search to replace a retiring professor for an assistant professor in Spanish. But I kept pushing for a lecturer or someone else full-time in Spanish, and I was able to get that. And so that is helping, having that other full-time role is helping to alleviate some of these adjunct issues, because the adjunct also is everyone wants to teach online. And we don't offer that. And when somebody cannot move and teach online at 4 different schools, they're not going to come here with no benefits. So having a full-time position has been extremely beneficial.
One thing that we've noticed also in engineering, looking back to your picture over the past 20 years or so, is that this generation of new engineers are more likely to change much more frequently than they used to be. So there are a lot of folks these days that are bouncing around. It has nothing to do with anything that's necessarily wrong. They're just available someplace else. Folks no longer really staying with the company for 20, 30 years like they used to. And that's one of the things that we've seen in engineering for our recent grads.
Tina, you want to add?
So the one thing that I would suggest considering as well in terms of benefits is, my husband works at WNO, so I know the WNO benefits as well, is this idea of children of faculty and staff being able to either attend VMI for free or be able to go in a consortium of schools. Where, right, there would be future benefit in terms of tuition support for children of faculty and staff. I think that's something that I'm not sure if it's a state rule or not, but having a consortium of schools that you might has a agreement with for that would be a good idea.
Does WNL do that?
WNO actually has a tuition benefit, so they pay 50% of tuition. Children of faculty and staff that are there for more than 5 years.
From the civil engineering perspective, what do the numbers look like as far as the number of cadets entering the civil engineering program and graduating? And have y'all looked at that compared to what the demand is in the private sector for those folks? And the reason I ask that question is I found it very challenging to find good qualified civil engineers. And I did a lot of recruiting, tried to get a lot of recruiting done here at VMI, but they were in such high demand that it was very difficult to get them. So how are those numbers looking? And if they are low, what can we do to try to bring those numbers back up to demand for the private sector?
Chuck's civil engineer, why don't you?
I'll try to address that. So our numbers are down a little bit in civil engineering, but the job market is tremendous. We had General Dyer in my class yesterday. We gave him opportunity to speak for a while. And the market is really strong. You're exactly right. The real challenge I think we're seeing is we have students entering college that are weak in math and in English, the basic skills. And both of them are important, but being weak in math really makes it challenging to make it into the engineering and the STEM curriculums. So we're at a spell where we're certainly civil. We're doing everything we can to try to bring our numbers back up. We're not down that much, but we are down a little bit. We would be happy for work ahead. One concern I've had for years is VMI really have marketed itself as a liberal arts college. But I would just ask that message of the strong STEM and engineering and STEM majors doesn't get lost in the liberal arts message. Because we are still here, and I think the departments are still strong. Engineering is still here, and the STEM department.
Engineering school when I was here.
So great question. Math is really the struggle. Students are just weak in math nationwide. Unfortunately, the ones that are really strong are, for some reason, they want to go to the big schools. And that seems to be our big challenge. And so it's really a big school versus small school, and VMI is in the small school category.
So to add to that question, so from a recruiting standpoint, is there something that we can do from a recruiting standpoint to try to recruit more kids to come in and be a part of the engineering program, working with the K through 12, catching them when they're in the 10th grade, telling them how great it was. The reason I became an engineer is I had a guidance counselor who showed me how much money I could make as an engineer, and said,
4 years of college is not a bad idea. I think I can handle that if I can get a decent salary, and the private sector is willing to pay a lot of money for these skills.
Janet, do you wanna, can you address that? from
Yes,
the
so
admissions
part of
recruiting
the-
standpoint?
Part of our initiative with enrollment management is to do post-wide cadet marketing. So it's not just admissions marketing, it's working with athletics, it's working with the agencies, it's working with communication and marketing to make sure, to Chuck's point, we're not just showing that we're a liberal arts institution, but hey, we are ABET accredited and we're a top 3 in this area. Our messaging has been a little lost on that specific piece of it, a STEM school as well. So we're amping that up, and we're also tailoring the marketing, like I mentioned earlier, to those freshmen and sophomores, hitting them early on in their high school careers to also help them understand what it's going to take to get to that level as well. We know that the math skills are low. We know the English skills are low. So if we know that they're low coming in, then where can we meet them where they're at to help them get on the right path early on? So we are working through all of that. We briefed with the department heads of what Bob had mentioned earlier today about when's the last time they took a high school math class? What was it? What was their grade overall? What was their GPA overall? That's all the analysis we're currently doing. So we can have not just throwing something against the wall and seeing what sticks, but what is actually going to be beneficial long-term from marketing and helping them level up skills if needed.
I just second the need for STEM support. Our numbers are down, as Chuck's are in biology. We're getting fewer cadets wanting to come into VMI as a biology major. And then we're losing more often because they don't have the math skills or chemistry, right? You have to take chemistry as a biology major. So we're not getting as many in, and they're not often, kind of quality to be able to stay as a biology major. So I would really love to see more recruitment of potential STEM majors and also more support for them while they're here, more enticement, more scholarships, more, attractive recruiting tools like money, right? To get more STEM kids here, because I think the overall STEM numbers don't look that bad, but I think that part of that is that psychology is included in STEM, which one can debate whether, how you feel about that inclusion, but the sort of more kind of, I guess, traditional version of STEM, of engineering, math, and the life sciences, biology, chemistry, I think those numbers are smaller than they even appear because we're a bit inflated, if I may be honest, by the inclusion of psychology. And so our numbers are really quite low coming in, and then we're having trouble retaining. We're just not getting quality STEM kids. And so I think, to reiterate Chuck's point, I think it's a huge factor. And, we don't want VMI to just be a Institute of Humanities, right? It's an engineering school originally and should have strong science programs. And I think we recognize that we need help bringing more strong STEM cadets in.
Is there something that we can do, meaning VMI, to work with K through 12 to begin to try to grow the future STEM cadets? Trying to get K through 12 to incentivize kids to do better at math. I mean, if K through 12 doesn't produce them, we're never going to get them. So question is there a way for us to do that, to help K through 12 to grow the future?
This morning when we were talking about this, I think you said in Virginia, high school students are only required to take 3 years of math. So often they don't take it as a senior, so you get this gap here.
Sometimes Shin step in here, they can use what they take in 7th and 8th grade is out toward high school, and so they take 2 years of high school math.
So is that, I don't know, guess that's surprising to me.
It was to me.
Is Virginia unique in that way? Do most states? Or is it normal that?
So it's 4 units of math to graduate from K-12, and this is common in most states. But in Virginia, it's 4, but you don't have to take them 4 in a row. You can take your 8th grade. So my son's a prime example. He's at Wilbur and Downing. He's taking algebra 1, which means in high school, he only has to take 3 math because algebra counts as his 4th in his 8th grade year, which means if you really don't want to do any math his senior year, he could skip math and still graduate K-12. And that's what we're finding. They're not taking all the time. They're not taking a math all 4 years because they can meet that requirement with their 8th grade year. Math. Something to consider
this is a broad scope to your point, sir. If you were to leverage, I'm just speaking off the cuff, if you were to leverage a scholarship to say, hey, look, if you took on top of your 4 years of math, but you took it your freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, we will help give you an extra scholarship to boost your enrollment at VMI to incentivize them to take 4 years of math or to, and also getting a 3.5 or higher. If you do something like that, there are state programs that do that right now. And starts in middle school. They're targeting them in middle school because that middle school math counts. Then they're tracking them to go to that institution. And then you're really incentivizing them to take all of their higher math, higher science.
Great solution.
To go there, but it is a cost and then you'd have to evaluate how to do that.
So I think from a Commonwealth perspective, again, I think this is a conversation that should be had with the administration, Secretary of Education. Because if we're seeing at VMI, the gaps we're creating, we are K through 12 in Virginia. If we do know nationally, we need students that are moving towards STEM. Let me also quickly share too, we have a lot of VMI graduates who came through liberal arts. They're national leaders in STEM. Guys like Adam Vallant and Cyber and many, many others. But I'll go back to say, if we're seeing those gaps, we're coming into that K through 12, again, that truly does come down to policy decisions.
Then another point, sir, talking about the visibility of VMI to upper students, K through 12 students. Our cadets are excellent ambassadors of our programs, our departments, of the institute. Everything that I've experienced personally with our cadets going out, working with school kids, the feedback that I've gotten has always been tremendous. So any opportunities that VMI can do to engage our cadets in the K through 12 program, just been.
I was gonna add is that we do have several programs in the summer. So in addition to STP, in the past, we've had it wasn't available this summer, but we've had some federal grants for teaching languages in the summer here. And it's open to not just VMI cadets. And so that's a great recruiting tool when they come here and they're able to start their Arabic here. And then we've had several of them stay. So, okay, yeah, I think I could try it out and become a VMI student. CIS, right? I don't know where CIS department is, but they have a cyber camp in the summer, perhaps, or a competition. Do we have one in math? Like, I think so. Anything that we could do, perhaps maybe governor's school, you know, we could look at pairing with some of the languages usually does it Washington and Lee, but maybe there's an opportunity there, really hitting on that high school age. Maybe we could boost a governor's school or engineering in the summer, something like that. But sort of the summer towards recruiting. And then also, though, to go back to the point about sometimes we want to send our own children and people in the community to school and programs in the summer. And so then if they were able to maybe, you know, get a scholarship or help financial aid to come here, having been enticed and spending some time in the summer here. So I think some of those summer programs and collaborating with state programs that are already set up would be great.
How about the help of the ROTC program?
Well, it's actually growing. So our class sizes now are about between 50 and 70. So I mean, the kids are there. Obviously, you all know that every cadet here attends all 4 years of ROTC. Cadet Command is going through kind of a turbulent time. They're going to be cutting 100 million over the next 10 years on scholarships. But VMI is not touched by Cadet Command because VMI still produces. So our numbers are still 120. So I'll pass it over to Nicole. Right now, we've got one of the strongest ROTC programs in the country.
Are the graduates getting the selections that they want or desired?
They do. They actually, with the exception of cyber, almost every cadet, if you go to branch night, they're pretty pleased on what they got. So a lot of kids are here. The OML is doing extremely well. Both of these ROTC kids are great. VMI has just got exceptional officers.
So it's not such great news for the Air Force. We
In total or just in ROTC?
well, ROTC. So we got cut significantly this year for scholarships. I was not able to compete any people for in-college scholarships, which I think are more valuable than high school scholarships because they're in my program and they're a known entity. I can see if they're gonna be a good fit, good leader. So we did not give any this past year and they're cutting, we're small potato compared to the Army. The Army's happy to take them from us, but they're cutting our high school scholarships again next year. And I think our scholarship line just continues to go down.
That's a nationwide.
Yes, sir. That's across all.
ROTC scholarships, once you get it, you can apply that wherever you.
Yes, sir. Yep, sure can.
What's driving that? Cause it's not the same in the Navy or the Army.
It's a good question. I mean, I know my big boss is fighting all the time with the bean counters to show the value in
It's ready.
what, short-sighted in my mind to cut that. And trying to convince, the leaders that are valuing maybe the platforms, because we have expensive platforms like the Navy to buy, the bill payer has to come from somewhere and scholarships are often a bill payer.
So I had the 3 years before Nicole there. One of the things that the Air Force tends to do when they drop the scholarships is they'll dial up the other commissioning source for training schools. So sometimes they compensate by that Rio status. They'll program fewer officers from ROTC, more from OTS. And I know in my time there, we were in a deficit when I arrived and then it began to grow. We were taking more spots away from it. So OTS slots actually went down because the academy stagnant. They're going to produce X year to a term.
It's kind of interesting, though, if you read the reports that go to Congress and the formal reports, and then also reports from like the Heritage Foundation to the Air Force right now is red from a readiness perspective. And just the way the government operates, I would expect that, the wind blows left and right. Cautiously optimistic that in the next couple of years, they're going to do something to address that.
Well, right now we're overproducing in officers.
Yeah.
For the enlisted, not so much. So our USAREC is actually, the money went to USAREC to maintain that enlistment capability. But for the officers, the reason the scholarships are being pulled, which doesn't seem to be impacting us to the extent that I thought, we're still getting seekers, commissioning students that want a contract without a scholarship. But one thing that we may consider is we do offer the in-state tuition here for the juniors and seniors. If we would do that for the freshmen and the sophomores, that may be an easy opportunity to contract those guys right out of the gate. And once they contract, they really get motivated to finish their course.
I'll just ask a very general question and throw it open. We sit in here and we see a lot of stats, we see GPAs, we see numbers, funnels, who's coming, our numbers, right? I'd like to hear from you, there's so much experience here over time. What trends are you seeing with the cadets? What are you seeing over time in terms of commitment to academic excellence? What are you seeing in terms, I heard earlier, maybe we're dividing a little bit, maybe, but like, are we on an upward trajectory? We're here, I see heads moving, right? So tell us, we need to hear this stuff, tell me about the quality of the cadets and their commitment, what's going on.
I think Troy said it before, there's sort of like this implication. You have some that are really good, very bright, very excited about everything, and some that have no work ethic whatsoever. From what I'm seeing, they may have a good GPA from high school. They come here and expect us to always be cutting them a break, like, oh, I didn't turn that in. Can you give me a new assignment? They've got a different mindset than just a few years ago.
Okay, that's what I was, even from just a few years ago.
Yeah. So I think, I know everybody always says COVID, but I think at COVID, there was this thing that happened where I'm used to having sort of this custom education experience, maybe, I don't know. And there is about a good third of the class, I would say, in mechanical engineering that had very poor work ethic. And that's concerning. The other thing that I noticed happening with that is if you have a bad work ethic, even as cool as mechanical engineering is, and all of the things that you can do with it when you get out, even the high salaries and everything, what they will do is they will say, well, this is hard. I just want a commission, so I'm gonna change to a different major. So that work ethic thing again, I mean, it's hard.
It hits the STEM hard, I think. 'Cause, you know, with labs, right, that, you know, in a lot of ways, it's demonstrably more work to be a STEM major. Right, you've got the lectures that your humanities friends have, but then all afternoon in labs. And that adds, yeah, so, I don't know, I think, yeah, I think we feel particularly.
We are losing something from this work ethic, I think.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and as interesting as it is, and I wish I could show them some of the things that they get to do, you know, and like print that on their brain and say, okay, don't forget this, you know, like.
That's why you work hard, so you can do that.
We're always trying to, you know, increase the numbers of things like internships that might get, you know, to create that kind of you know, a draw for them, you know, to bring them through that hard time, of getting into alignment to do these things, but it's a tough sell.
With taking them on field trips to actual, for instance, construction projects.
And we do,
Because
yeah, but
I spent my summer working for VDOT between my junior and senior year, and I got sold. I mean, I got to get out on construction projects, cranes, dozers, everything going around. We were just tearing up. I mean, dirt's flying. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm gonna get paid to do. I get to play with big talk.
I think we need to get them in that, like, in their, more in their rat year, and then maybe like in an SDP kind of thing, so that they can see, or, you know, this is an interesting area. So we try to give them some experiences in like the intro classes, things like that, but you know, maybe.
Time constraints on their schedule makes that virtually impossible for us, at least in biology.
To that point, sir, we're looking at developing a more robust gap-grade program here. Obviously, Virginia, one of the greatest resources Virginia's got is history. So they've got battlefields, they've got things that we've got. We'd love to get our commissioner seeking cadets out to see or whatnot. Obviously, for these cadets, time is their major critical resource. They don't have a lot of time. But I think that if we can develop a better staff, right? We're bringing in a staff right director that's going to fully flesh out a program for us. Give us the opportunities, whether it's virtual staff rights to get them out of the classroom, to a virtual staff right, or even something close here. Is Lexington, for example, has got some history to Lexington. There could be a staff right that we develop with the community. We're looking at that. But right now is, we think to get them out of the university for a bit, to have them exposed to some of that would probably be a great asset for our ROTC. So we're looking at over this semester and developing it for.
I'll also say several of my colleagues have spoken to the fact that I think a lot of cadets are coming in less well prepared than even 4 or 5 years ago in terms of foundational skills, math, reading, like those kind of things. Something that for me at least, I think that is at least as striking and perhaps even more important is a significant evolution in personal accountability and basic sort of professionalism. So I've seen a striking increase in the number of cadets who just don't turn in work. That's a major problem in rat history. So we do end up getting a fair number of Fs in rat history, but the vast.
I gotta get now, they don't turn in work.
Yeah, they just don't turn in assignments. So it's not that they're turning in bad work, it's just that they aren't turning in work at all. And so this is something we struggle with, but also things like responding to emails. Cadets are in my office a lot less than they were 5, 6, 10 years ago, right? I mean, one of the unique and valuable things about VMI is that, right, faculty and cadets have contact all the time, right? We're here, we want to help them. And at least in my department, in my classes, I see a need to push cadets a lot more to come to office hours, to have meetings, to talk over paper drafts, right, to do basic things like that. And it seems like they are less well prepared to embrace the kind of professionalism that's associated with being a college student at VMI.
See a lot of heads nodding around the room.
Plus one.
If I was a member of a committee that had some ideas about the quality enhancement plan that we're planning, we're still in very embryonic stages. And this came up, this is sort of awareness for college. And so we went to other institutions, the record of other institutions, their QEP requests in the recent past. every college or most colleges who were asking for QEP money are asking for, can we get like an academic boot camp? Because these kids are coming in and they don't know what college is, right? So it's certainly not just unique to VMI. But the depth and breadth of the problem is, and all my colleagues have attested to it, is people are coming in and you know, I had a student ask me for if he could get corrections on an exam. Because with younger children, know that particularly post-pandemic, that's something that would happen. Like, oh, you got a 50 on this exam, you know, take it again. And so cadets were coming in, it's like, can I take this exam again? I'm like, no. That's how we do that. And so I think it's a broader societal problem, but at least in the QEP ideation committee, we've been coming up with some ideas, you know, perhaps a proposal to get QEP back in the project. Just but yeah, it's been tough.
Yeah, so I think with a lot of the focus has been on the bottom end of the scale. I'm going to speak more to the top end of the scale. I think that the initial question that was, you know, asked was whether or not there's positive for great inflation and things like that. That's red line. Peers are either just well or flat, and then they move up. There are a number of factors to that. I think Troy mentioned something about the excellent work folks at the Miller Academic Center are doing and so forth. But I think some of that has to do with students having to pick major. Many people have aspirations of being this, but sometimes they don't always have the skills. So we're tracked to see how people's outcomes have changed as they switch majors to certain things that either were greater interest to them or had greater efficiency. And what you noted was someone switches from maybe a 0.8, 0.9 GPA, and over the next 2-3 semesters, it begins to rise. That's because either because they're more interested now, or that they're doing something that is more commensurate with maybe their skill set. So there are a number of factors that sometimes we could, for some, it's just like that light bulb just comes on. And you can't recognize this person from the one you saw the previous semester because they're just completely different students. So it works both ways. The factors on the other side, but there are also good examples on the upside as well.
For what it's worth, I can tell you 50 years ago that we had we come in the rat line, and then in that first year, there was a mass exodus from the STEM majors to liberal arts. So it's not a new thing. And I remember specifically biology, we had 78 start and 12 of us made it. And so it's not just a modern thing.
I just think we're not getting the 78 in to start. Like, we're losing a lot, but we're not getting, I mean, I would love to get 78 and more, you know, that's so we're starting at a lower number and then with probably similar attrition.
I don't think we were very realistic back then.
Yeah.
As you already know, I'm back in the classroom myself, and one thing that is starkly different today versus 1992 is the teachers have videos posted, but you can constantly go back and watch lectures and so forth. Do we do that?
A number of faculty do. I don't know. Want to address our own faculty? No faculty.
Yeah, I mean, we do it all the time. I'll do a lecture, for instance, and then, you know, give an assignment. Know that they won't have gotten everything necessarily from the lecture, so I'll put a supplementary video of that concentrates on.
But do you have like I can go back and see years worth of lectures.
I don't do that. No, it's not like you can just go and skip class. No, these are usually.
Well, and again, I realize that they're not skipping class here, but I do think it is interesting to be able to go back and watch a lecture. I mean, just to me, we all know people read less and less. People don't read nobody even reads an email these days. You know? And so I think the integration or the use of video.
Well, it works really nice, for instance, in a topic that we might not have enough time to cover in class, like if I'm doing mechanical engineers and I want them to do a Microsoft project to manage this course project, then yeah, you know, I could talk a little bit to it in whatever, but then I could put a really detailed case study online. Be talking through it, and so that they can skip to the parts that I need to figure out. So we do stuff like that, but they don't place or don't make it so they can go to sleep in class and then just catch up, which I guess is the
Well,
way.
as a 55-year-old student, I would just say that it is, I found it helpful to be able to go back and look at videos of lectures. So, you know, use it or not, but
Well, we didn't have video back when I was here, so I would go spend a lot of time in the professor's office getting them to repeat several times so that I understood it.
Clifford, can you ask the video a question?
again, to me. Nobody texts.
He texts, if it's like the AI, yes.
Yeah, you text the teacher. Again, I just think nobody reads anything anymore, sadly. And so I think that, you know, videos just, I mean, you know, in sales and marketing, whatever, I mean, you just see everything's got a video component to it, training videos in the military. And so, you know, you ask a kid how to do something, they don't go look for the directions, they just YouTube it or whatever. Yeah.
I was gonna say that this, I mean, it has to do with pedagogical development and making sure that we are continuing that for ourselves and having the professional development support tools. I mean, there are whole associations out there that focus on how to teach in different disciplines. My department, we're members of them. We're constantly going and presenting at these. And so it's learning things like, how are we going to integrate AI? So we can't be going on our teaching model based on a student from 50 years ago. I mean, that's something that we still have to continually update and have resources.
Which, by the way, this place loves you to go back based on 50 years.
Well, but it doesn't work. And mostly the bigger societal issues with the college preparedness, I mean, we have to meet them where they are. We can't solve everything through K through 12 right now. So we do have to realize what types of teaching, what types of teachers, how are we having results in class? And yeah, that may mean a little bit more student-centered, a little bit less teacher-centered. It may mean a little bit more teaching them how to memorize together in class, that kind of thing, using different visual elements, like you said, reaching different learning styles rather than sort of going just on text-based. So I think it's important for us to have the resources and training to continue to learn how to adapt and meet the students where they are.
That's very informative. And that is recognizing that even in 2024, how cohorts are learning different. We all recognize and hear repeatedly that later generations are gapping in areas just based on these devices changing how their middle construct absorbs.
Well, we can adapt and we can use that to advantage.
One of the things we hear about a lot here, and just being candid, we hear a lot of positive, but I want to hear from you all, is the Miller Academic Center. And I know some people have already, is the feeling generally that it is a important asset? Is the feeling that it needs to be expanded? Is the feeling that, like, tell us about it, because we hear a lot about it. And I'd love to hear what you all think is, you know, in the classroom, what kind of benefit you and the students are getting from it.
Allison is awesome, super proactive. She has a great staff. As some examples, the kids coming back on academic probation in the past were sort of let back in and said, go for it. But now they have recovery programs where they have meetings all the time, and they've had great success with that. Houston and Emily and I are now starting to track students in the lower level core math courses. And we're immediately taking the kids that are turning nothing in. And last week, she got a list of 15 kids in the calculus program that wasn't turning anything in. We have group study sessions. We have group study sessions that are supported by faculty all through the MAC, and they definitely want to expand. So I think it's their proactiveness that's been super positive.
Anybody else have thoughts on it?
Well, it's been up and down. There's been some years when it's went really well. And there was some down years and we're back up. Then we'll hit the sweet spot now where everybody's on the same page. The smoothly run machine right now. It hasn't always been the case. I mean, I know that at some point they want to do different thing, not this one, but compel people some to take part in the programs over there and some who didn't, so that they will compare their scores at the end of the year. You know, they got to push back from folks like ourselves where this is really an experiment, and you shouldn't force people to participate in the experiment. I mean, they didn't quite see it the same way, but I mean, eventually it was discontinued. We experienced years where it was just people went in there and just essentially handled themselves, but it's just a very, very good team that we have, and some good things that are coming up from various things.
So we brought Allison in to see if we can integrate them back into the ROTC program. We really heavily lean on our seniors, the firstclassmen is our leaders. And we wanted to see if we could develop a program where the seniors became tutors to the juniors and sophomores. And she's redesigning the app that they have for the Mac to start developing the seniors on kind of exceptional seniors are now going to be leaned towards as being tutors, peer tutors, if you will, the juniors to the software. So we'll see how that goes over this semester and the next, but it makes obvious sense. The seniors are the strong ones in the school. The rest of the guys look up to all those seniors, and we think that if we can incorporate them into a tutorship type of program, it can only help us. And the Mac and Allison really kind of set that up for us.
I'll say, we brought Allison in to our head coaches meeting when I first got here. And I think she's been huge as far as just coordinating with the Cato department and that athletic development office. I'll also say, if you haven't been, there's a math lab in the library. And I think that's kind of falls under her as well. That's awesome. I mean, I kind of take some time. If you haven't been up there, you should go. But I think there's a lot of positives of what is going and expanded from a staff standpoint as well. So I know athletes or that I've talked to about that, about the MAC as well as the math lab is really cool.
Great. Thanks.
Well, don't give away, that's ours.
That's about it. I like it. We're a lot of people in there.
Anybody else? Let me just say, thank you all so much for being here. But much more so, thank you for what you do for the cadets, because that's what it's all about. And I think all of you know this about me. I'm a huge advocate for our academic program. And I just think what y'all do is wonderful. And I hope you're still, like all of us, like you say, like the way it was done 50 years ago. Not 50 for me, 50 for but you know, some of my most enduring VMI relationships were with professors. And so I sure hope you all are still having that experience with your cadets. And so thank you all for everything, and thank you.
Thank you very much.